It's time to talk about archaeology. That's something we do a lot on our channel, and we're always excited to bring you the latest and greatest archaeological discoveries from all over the world. We're doing it again in this video. We've scoured the world for incredible finds that come with a sense of mystery, and we're bringing them all back to you. Let's do it! We begin off the shores of Turkey's Kekova Island, where we find an ancient city called Dolaciste. You'll have a little difficulty seeing it from the shore though, because this ancient Lycian city sank beneath the waves long ago. During its pomp, it was an important trading hub in this part of the world, handling imports and exports to and from places like Andriac, Aperlai, and Samina. All that's left of it today are the shipwrecks and scattered architectural ruins that marine archaeologists sometimes find. Dolaciste was founded during the Archaic period, but it's thought that the city was doomed by a combination of earthquakes and rising sea levels during the Byzantine era. Andriace and Aperlai both also ended up partially submerged for the same reasons. If you know where to look, you can still see some of the quays, rock-cut buildings, staircases, and water channels above the waterline. You have to go beneath it to find the city's sarcophagi, terracotta pipes, and the foundation of its grand buildings. It's thought that the city was abandoned by the 8th century, but archaeologists aren't 100% sure. In September 2017, a team of archaeologists from the American University of Beirut set off to the headlands of Tyre in southern Lebanon. They weren't sure what they were likely to find there, but their curiosity was rewarded by the discovery of a Hellenistic sanctuary amid the remains of the ancient Phoenician city of Tyre. Pieces of 2 of the sanctuary's walls are still standing, along with a stone platform and a limestone altar. Both the platform and the altar are thick with traces of ash, suggesting constant ritual activity in the past. The lack of animal bones at the site indicates that it was incense that was burned here, rather than anything more sinister. Dating stone monuments is never easy for archaeologists, but the presence of a 2,200-year-old decorated oil lamp helped to provide context for the rest of the discoveries. The city of Tyre was one of the oldest in the world, founded about 4,750 years ago, and was believed to be impregnable until the forces of Alexander the Great laid siege to it for 8 months in the year 332 BCE, eventually wearing down its people and defenses and claiming the city. Now we're going to talk about chocolate, but before anybody gets too excited, we mean chocolate flint, not chocolate candy. An ancient chocolate flint mine was discovered by archaeologists in the Polish city of Krakow in September 2021. We suspect that most people won't have heard of this kind of flint before because it can only be found in the Holy Cross Mountains of Poland. The experts think that this particular mine was last used around 10,000 years ago. The ancient residents of Krakow placed a high value on this type of flint because it was both hard and brittle, perfect for manufacturing tools. This discovery solves an old problem for Polish archaeologists. They've identified many ancient tool-making workshops in the region, but always wondered how the people who worked in them transported chocolate flint from the Świętokrzyski Mountains more than 100 miles away. Now they know that they didn't have to, because they had a source much closer to home. Making tools from chocolate flint was the most efficient way of going about the task from the Paleolithic era to the Neolithic era, before better methods were finally developed. The history of China is long and complicated. The land has played host to many cultures and civilizations over many millennia, and we know much more about some than we do about others. About the state of Shu, we know almost nothing, which is why the discovery of this fragment of a gold mask in March 2021 is so important. It provides us with a tangible link to a people who left behind very few written records or artifacts. Archaeologists say that the mask is roughly 3,000 years old. It comes from Sanxingdui, arguably the most important archaeological site in the country. The mask is one of around 500 objects that were found during the same dig. all of which might be shoe in origin. Many of the objects are made from precious materials like ivory, gold, jade, and bronze. They are a sign of how rich and prosperous the shoe state was before it was attacked and then conquered by the neighboring state of Qin in the year 316 BCE. Experts think that the mask, which is 84% pure gold, was probably worn by a priest or religious leader during important ceremonies. Christopher Columbus did not discover America, nor was he the first European to arrive here. Most people accept that as fact now, but there are still a few out there who haven't got the message. Perhaps this will help. In October 2021, scientists completed a long-running study of a site in Newfoundland, Canada. The site has long been suspected to be Viking in origin, and the study confirms it. We now have undeniable evidence that the Vikings landed here and built a small settlement in the year 1021. That's over 400 years before Columbus and his ships turned up. The year of their arrival was obtained by analyzing tree rings within pieces of wood that were cut by the Vikings to build structures for their new home, which is today known as Landsau Meadows and recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The big question that has to be answered now is where the Vikings went from here. Landsau Meadows was laid out as a base camp, from which further exploration missions could be launched. They presumably went south, but how far south? Could they have made it into parts of the USA? In September 2021, amateur scuba diver Shlomi Katzin went for a dip in the waters off the coast of Haifa in Italy. He didn't know he was about to make a remarkable archaeological discovery, but he did. Shlomi spotted an object in the water and dragged it back to the surface for a better look. He'd found a sword, and it's not just any old sword. This sword was either dropped or tossed into the water by a Crusader knight some 900 years ago. It's covered in marine organisms, but beneath its crusty shell, the 4-foot-long weapon is fully intact. There's a Crusader citadel not far from here at Atlit, so there might be a connection between the sword and the castle. On the other hand, this part of the coast provides perfect natural cover shelter for ships, so it could just as easily have been lost overboard from one. Whoever owned this sword must have been very big, very strong, or both. Its sheer size makes it difficult to wield, and because it's made of iron, it would be heavy even without its undersea coating. Maybe people were just fitter back then. Many archaeologists have visited the Romanelli cave on Italy's Adriatic coast in the past. They came in search of the ancient art that adorns the walls of the cave, but apparently most of them didn't look hard enough. In October 2021, archaeologists confirmed the discovery of a previously unknown but very extensive collection of Paleolithic paintings in the cavern. The newly discovered paintings, most of which are finger paintings created by people dipping their fingers in moon milk, include a bovid, a bird, and several indistinct geometric shapes. In some cases, tools were used to enhance the appearance of the work. The rock that features the painting of the bovid was probably chosen specifically for its shape, which gives the painting a three-dimensional effect. Experts have noted the similarities between these cave paintings and other prehistoric paintings from places like France, Azerbaijan, and Spain. The resemblance is so close that we're forced to wonder whether there was a shared cultural heritage that spanned enormous distances across mainland Europe 14,000 years ago when the oldest of the paintings were created. Based on the evidence at the site, it seems that people stayed here and carried on painting the walls for a further 3,000 years. Learning to consume tobacco might not have been the greatest step forward the human race has ever taken, but it's a very old habit. In October 2021, we got some fresh insight into just how old the habit is. New archaeological evidence from Utah, USA, has yielded the oldest known evidence of human tobacco consumption, dating back 12,300 years. That's a remarkable conclusion when you consider that prior to this evidence emerging, most historians thought that tobacco use began no earlier than 3,000 years ago. The evidence in question comes from the excavation of an ancient hunter-gatherer camp within the Wishbone site in Utah's Great Salt Lake Desert. Archaeologists at the scene found a fully intact hearth, still surrounded by bone and stone artifacts, including Hasket spear tips. Inside the hearth, the experts found 4 charred tobacco seeds, which are accepted as evidence of chewing tobacco. All the archaeological evidence at the site confirms that it's 12,300 years old, and so we have to conclude that the tobacco seeds are the same age. This bad habit has been with us since the Ice Age, but tobacco still probably wasn't domesticated until several thousand years after this hearth was abandoned. The people who built the Ayaz Kala fortresses in the Kizilkum Desert of Uzbekistan liked them so much that they built them 3 times. The fortresses are very ancient, perhaps as old as 2,400 years, and were likely built as a line of defense against barbarian raiders. There was plenty here to defend. The forts were made by the Khwarezmian people, who controlled a large oasis on the delta of the Amu Darya River and developed extensive agricultural settlements there. It was very desirable land, so it was of constant interest not only to barbarians, but also the Saka people who lived just north of here. The elements of the fortress that were built 2,400 years ago are designated Ayaz Kala I, which is thought to have become a ruin by the 1st century. The Khwarezmshahs returned to the site in the 7th century to create Ayaz Kala II on a conical hill right next to what was left of Ayaz Kala I by then. Ayaz Kala II was a grander fortress than its predecessor, including a palace with halls and columns and a special fire sanctuary. It lasted until the 13th century. Ayaz Kala III has a confusing name because it was built before Ayaz Kala II. Most archaeologists believe it was erected as a garrison fortress in the 1st century, and possibly the home of a ruler during the Kushan period, but there's not enough archaeological evidence inside it to say for sure. The next thing we want to look at is not so much a discovery as it is the science of discovery. Thanks to the invention of aerial LiDAR mapping, archaeologists are able to see things that are invisible to the naked eye. They can see the outlines of structures that existed thousands of years ago without needing to dig into the ground to find them. The technology is revolutionizing archaeology as we know it, and has recently been put to good use in the United Kingdom. Throughout 2021, the UK's National Trust has been mapping the Wallington estate in Northumberland, England, using LiDAR technology. They've found more than 100 previously undetected archaeological features in this comparatively small space, including what's thought to be a 4,000-year-old prehistoric site. The same scans have also shed new light on features that archaeologists already knew about. There's an Iron Age hill fort inside Wallington Estate, but these scans reveal invisible annexes to the fort's main enclosures and what might be prehistoric pathways leading to and from it. This technology is only going to improve in years to come, so who knows what else we might find out about sites we thought we already understood. John Dee was a very strange man. He was a special advisor to Queen Elizabeth I of England during the 16th century and also served as her court astronomer. In his private time, though, he liked to dabble with the occult. In his writings, he admits to using crystals and mirrors to speak to angels and the spirits of the dead. Dee was 100% convinced that his methods worked and was especially impressed with the effectiveness of his so-called spirit mirror. In October 2021, we found out why Dee was so taken with the object. The obsidian mirror wasn't made by Dee, and nor is it English in design. Instead, it's an Aztec relic taken from Mexico, as confirmed by a new geochemical analysis of the artifact. The Aztecs believed obsidian to be a material with supernatural properties. They used it in medicine and also in the composition of their battle shields. More importantly, they, like Dee, believed the reflections in the mirrors could be used to communicate with spirits. The question of how John Dee could have known what the Aztecs used these mirrors for is one that will probably always remain unanswered. Is the Pilot Stone a genuine archaeological artifact? Many experts have tried to answer that question since the stone was discovered in 1961 in Israel's Caesarea Maritima archaeological site, and none of them have been able to come up with conclusive proof either way. The stone would be just another badly damaged ancient limestone block if it weren't for the inscription on its surface. Written in Latin, the text mentions the name of Pontius Pilate and identifies him as the prefect of Judea. This is the only contemporary physical evidence of Pilate's existence that's ever been found. Aside from this, and aside from the Bible, he appears only in the writings of Philo and Josephus. They're both highly respected ancient writers, but their writings of the life of Pilate were made several decades after the crucifixion. The design of the stone is consistent with dedication stones at ancient temples, but it seems that this one was removed from its temple and damaged on purpose. Could that have been an act of retaliation for his role in the death of Christ? On the other hand, could someone have come across a discarded ancient limestone block and carved these words onto it hundreds or perhaps even thousands of years later? Maybe we'll find out one day. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!